Welcome back, everybody, after our short break. Now we have a chat, data-driven marketing, how to best acquire new users. And I would like to welcome Elena and Lucia. So the virtual stage is yours. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Matej. Hi, the virtual stage, I like that. So indeed, we are here to discuss data-driven marketing and specifically how to best acquire new customers. So I am Elena Poughia, and I'm the founder of Data Natives, which is a community of data scientists headquartered in Berlin, and also a media platform called Data Economy, which is for data-driven people, including data scientists, engineers, analysts, but also marketeers who use data-driven approaches. And I'm here in conversation with Lucia Mrvova, who actually is the expert here, I would say, when it comes to how to best acquire new customers. And I will be asking her a lot of questions and, of course, giving my input here and there. So let's kick this off. Let's kick off this conversation. I happen to know Lucia for quite a while, actually. She was one of my first friends in Berlin, where I'm based. She was working back then for a company called Billfront, which was a fintech company. But her journey has taken her to a lot of different locations, but also different products and services. So started first, I think, after Billfront with a lifestyle app. For Tunica, then continuing with 8Fit, also a little while in a recruitment company, doing marketing there, and then moved to Madrid to Lingo Kids, and now working at an agency is a completely different style, different size of the coin. AppAgent. So welcome, Lucia. Let's kick things off by telling us a little bit about your different journey and how is it to do marketing for so many different products.
Thanks for the nice intro, Elena, and it's good to be here with you and with everybody else on the virtual stage. I guess you can say from my brief intro that I'm easily bored. Marketing, as you mentioned yourself, I've transitioned from web to mobile, which are quite different approaches, and they work on they are fundamentally quite different, although the basics are, of course, the same. Basically, you are looking to acquire users, of course, and sustainably drive your business further. So the basics are always the same, I would say, but what changes is, of course, the audience you are talking to. Depending on the product, your persona changes, therefore the creative approach changes, and perhaps also the channel and the geographical mix changes, which can impact your strategy as well.
Cool, great. So you always need to adapt when you're looking at marketing, right? You need to adapt to be able to find the right user. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. Like that's why data is. I guess it's always been important, but now we have access to such granularity of information down to user level, and it's really important to be able to understand what channel, what geography, even what operation system in terms of mobile marketing kind of drives the biggest value. Of course, somebody, a customer in Germany will have a different behavior to a customer in US or Eastern Europe, and it's the same for channels. So we often see that basically, for example, social media channels such as Facebook or Instagram bring very different customers to those acquired through Google or even Apple search ads. And this can be seen in terms of retention, conversion rates, and lifetime value generated by the users themselves. So really quite interesting to see that it's not only about, let's say, gender and demographics and the persona themselves, and yes, perhaps including the country and some sort of cultural background, but even the channel that you acquire them from plays a big role in the quality of the customer, so to say.
And how would you say then you acquire new customers in the different channels? So tell me a little bit about the journey of customer acquisition, retention, and reactivation.
Right. Yes. So for growth marketing, especially, it's very important to, of course, work in an agile way and to be connected very closely with the product team themselves, often with developers. So that's, for example, how our setup was in Fortunica. It was a very small, very agile team where, you know, we would all be kind of in the same room, crunching the same data. And the channels differ in many ways. For example, on Google, you have, you know, the algorithm drives majority of your work, and overall the marketing, mobile marketing, but digital overall has shifted quite a bit in the recent years, to where, I don't know, just a couple of years ago, you would have to, you know, crunch data to understand what kind of bid you can tweak, and how you can kind of set up the campaign in a way to perfect your, let's say, return on investment. Whilst nowadays the digital or mobile marketer has less and less levers to pull on this side, as everything is getting automated. And so the whole focus is shifting to creative and kind of crunching the data from that side and understanding what elements of the creative are the ones that really trigger the desired actions, and how you can iterate on that and improve on that. So it has really been all about the creative. Yeah, sorry, go for it.
So can you give us an example? No, sorry. Yeah, sorry for interrupting. Can you give us an example of what do you mean by creative? So, did you? I'm not sure.
Yes, I think I got your question.
Can you give us an example of?
Yeah.
Okay, let me know if for whatever reason my internet is not working very well and turn off my camera. Okay.
It seems to be a bit better now, but I got your question. Yes, so basically, creative is king, I guess, is what they say these days. And that's mostly what, of course, the social channels are based on, but really all the channels, when you think about it, from Google's UAC or renamed app campaigns, that, you know, the best quality of traffic is acquired through the ads on YouTube, and then also videos that are displayed in their networks, in apps. And also the Apple search ads themselves, for example, are very visually driven, right? Because you kind of showcase the screenshots and what the app is all about. And what we see, so basically one element that is very, very important is visual consistency. And I know this has been talked about for many years. And it's kind of the elephant in the room, but it really, it can be very tricky, and it drives big impact when you are able to align kind of the visual look and feel from the very first impression through the App Store to the app itself, and kind of keep it aligned. It doesn't necessarily need to be connected to branding, but it's more about the emotion that it creates. And what I've noticed in the last year especially is that more and more people are not only, so what we've known for a few years now is people get blind to advertising, and they recognize stock photos like this, and they basically just scroll past, right? So at first we started shifting towards more homemade, perhaps you could say uglier ads, which is a total nightmare for all the designers I've ever worked with. But another aspect I've been noticing these days is that it's really becoming more and more about the aspiration and emotion that you evoke, rather than you know, just showcasing like this is the feature you will get, or you know, some kind of rational showcase of what the app does. People really want to understand how it will make them feel, and what they will achieve on a personal level by interacting with your product. And also what I've seen, for example, at AppAgent, basically we were able to drive a huge impact through utilizing trends. So for example, back then big trend was packaging meal, like meal prep. And so utilizing kind of a combination of knowing what your users are like, kind of crunching the data, how they interact with the app, what features they are using, because not always, of course, you need to listen to your users, and I recommend talking to them, doing interviews and running surveys every now and then. But we all know that sometimes we don't really know what we want. We think we want one thing, but then we get it and we are like, maybe not. So it's really important to observe the user journey and the interaction, and then if possible, connect it to whatever is trending on the internet. And that can drive huge impact.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Lucia. I had to turn off my camera because I think like my internet is not very stable for this big marker tool. But thanks very much for the insights. I would like to ask. I mean, I guess like you mentioned in our talk so far, how the algorithm actually change and basically with that it defines also like how you use the tools. So how if you have a social media algorithmic change, let's say, does that make acquiring new customers harder?
Depends. But I would say perhaps I think you could generally say it may make things harder for the smaller players, so newcomers and startups who are just making their way through on smaller budgets, and kind of just starting to figure out what takes and what doesn't with their customers, because of course the algorithm evolves consistently, and every week perhaps there is an update that we don't even know about, and let's say every 6 months there is a big one that eventually has an impact on your account's performance. And yeah, given that the algorithm takes into account various things, especially on the social sides, such as people like your organic account, kind of social interaction, organic social interaction, the engagement with the ad, other than actually converting, but maybe giving likes, commenting, and things like this. So this can have a both positive and negative impact, especially if you are, like I said, still figuring things out and just trying to find what clicks. Of course, you will have to hop through a bunch of failures till you'll find the winner. And yeah, this can be very frustrating, and it can take a very, very long time if you don't have tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend per month.
I think you just like nailed the big question, right? Like the kind of like the holy grail of performance marketing, at least. Like, how can you have the most impact and target the right customers with the least amount of money? I know it's kind of like $1 million question, but perhaps if you can give us your insights, given that you've worked in so many startups that I'm sure also struggled with their budget. They don't have endless amount of money to spend on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, of course, everybody's being conscious with their budget, and from small companies to big ones, everybody's concerned about the sustainability of the business. At the end of the line, it's always about how can we make the money back and invest it back to the product, of course, and make it better for the people. But yes, it lies again back to the data. So it's important in my opinion, like, you cannot separate marketing from product. Marketing is everything, right? Even to create a product, you need a good understanding of marketing, because you need to be able to communicate to people in an engaging way and kind of make them understand instantly why they should love your product, your app. And crunching the data and understanding what the insights are telling you is really the key element. I was actually having a discussion about this recently with someone, where we were kind of pondering, I believe there is a new position on the horizon, because like I said, more and more it is really the creative is the biggest lever marketers have these days. But to be able to create a kind of killer creative, let's call it, you need to understand the elements that really trigger the desired actions of people. And to do this, you need to, of course, crunch a lot of data from all the different creatives, and see and be able to eliminate the specific aspects. So this is where the designers have to work very closely with the UA managers. But it's a very demanding thing. And of course, most designers don't really understand numbers and are not interested in crunching data. On the other hand, most UA managers are very busy managing their campaigns. And it's often, I guess, a little bit of an extra annoyance to be able to have to sit down and kind of explain what which data point means. So I think one of the things on the horizon for us in mobile marketing is having a person dedicated to really just being specialized on digesting the data from the creatives and being able to explain it and derive insights, actionable insights from it.
Interesting. So basically like a product manager for between
for,
them?
Yeah, like a product manager for videos and images for creatives. Exactly, something like that.
Nice.
You named it well. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'll think about that. Then let's try to create a new job out in the market. You mentioned a couple of times that you mainly work with mobile. But you've of course started with websites.
Yeah.
I mean, from my point of view, we actually have a lot of viewers that check us out on their devices, but we haven't actually invested that much in mobile. What would be for you the main differences between mobile and websites and desktop?
Well, I would definitely recommend you to invest in mobile, because who's not on mobile? I know you spend a lot of time on your phone.
I do.
Like we all do, don't we? It's a bit sad, but yeah, that's how today's society is. And actually, just a few days ago, I saw an updated statistics that currently the estimation is that 97% of people check out, kind of do research on their mobile device before they proceed with the purchase. Or whatever kind of conversion they are doing. So it is really all about mobile these days, and I believe this trend will continue. Desktop is kind of dead, more or less, apart from perhaps working on it. And the differences are, well, in terms of the mechanics for the UI manager themselves, perhaps not as major, but they are quite important. So in mobile, you do need to have an attribution partner. So an MMP solution that helps you understand where your users are coming from, because unlike with website, you have the App Store, so you will be able to see the performance of your ads. If you are, for example, on Facebook or Google, like, yes, okay, I can understand my click-through rate, I can understand if people like the ad, let's say, and if they get to the App Store. But what happens then? Then you don't know. If you don't have an attribution provider, you just have a bunch of people coming from all kinds of places, and you won't be able to understand what channel, what country, what operation system brings you the best value, what cohorts. So this is one difference, where you need an external tool to be able to see basically, yeah, your cohorts. Another difference is that you, without any registration required, as soon as the user installs your app, you are able to track every one of their moves, and your users' behavior, and you can segment them into power users. How they interact with the app, what features they like. So this is quite different to web. On the other hand, on web, it's much easier to track your user, because, as I mentioned before, there is no wall in the form of App Store that kind of separates the outside world, let's say, from your app or web platform. So these are some of the differences. Then, of course, things like CRM, where you are able to kind of drive retention and further engagement through things like in-app messages and app notifications, that doesn't really work as much on desktop.
I see. Yeah, good takeaways. I'm gonna turn off my camera again. So there's I mean, I think you already have given us quite a few of growth hacking techniques, and but I definitely want to hear and dive deep a little bit more, because I think that's the kind of the difference right now when it comes to marketing. You already mentioned creative, and how basically you look at the actionable insights, you take the data, and essentially you translate it into a creative output that really makes a difference. But when it comes to growth hacking, which I think it's somehow what turns the zero to hero companies, what would be your input? I mean, I know you for Tunica that you joined, you grew it basically from start to $250,000 a month, so that's pretty impressive. I'm sure you have some really good tips for our audience.
Yeah, I mean, really, this ties back to my point of agile teams. Growth hacking itself, in my opinion, of course, there are some growth hacks that a UA manager can do by themselves. So as long as we are talking about only the one part of the journey, right, the top funnel itself, let's say. But growth hacking is really, in my opinion, a combination of the full life cycle of the user or customer, whatever you want to call it. And for this, it's really important that the marketing and CRM and product teams are deeply integrated and communicate and work closely together. Because I mean, acquisition itself is easy. Anybody can kind of set up an account and acquire some cheap installs. But what you really want to do is, first of all, acquire valuable installs, and then make sure that you are able to retain them. So one kind of growth hacking perhaps element would be the consistency of the whole journey, as I mentioned before, being able to align the creative from the very first impression with your brand to the product itself, to the very end, low bottom of the funnel. But another thing is really just making sure, of course, the most important thing is to have actually a cool app that engages the users. And one mistake that I see many people do is not paying attention to CRM, not engaging the users. So it's really important to kind of track your D1 retention, D7 retention. Generally, I mean, mobile world is quite famous for how terrible the retention rates are. Really, like 95% of people who install your app will pretty soon deinstall it and never come back again. So you're burning through a lot of users on a daily basis, right? Like, I mean, of course, there are millions and billions of us. But still, this is a real issue. So the focus is really shifting from, or has been shifted from just acquiring to actually engaging and retaining, and further down the line, making advocates from your users and having them refer their friends and family. So placing good referral techniques in the app is also quite important. For whenever that's appropriate for the product, of course, because sometimes you don't necessarily want to refer if it's a sensitive topic.
No, but that's interesting. It's interesting how you boils down to hacking, yes, marketing, but also the approach has to go hand in hand with the creative, and also hand in hand with creating this sort of like loyalty and trust feeling with your users, that essentially they want to refer you and they want to be your number one advocates. So you mentioned also in the beginning that
Sorry, I think we have
Lucia?
I think we have a bit of delay. No, I was just saying that otherwise it's not sustainable, and you just keep...
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I was gonna ask you, what I wanted to go back to is when it comes to the exact data points, like the gender and the geographic division. So I'm wondering also if like marketing strategies change to acquire new users based on like their geographical location and their gender, and how do you tackle that?
Yeah, absolutely. And like my one answer to this would be A/B testing. A/B test everything. So of course, you always have men and women users for whatever product is out there, and sometimes the product is more tailored to one audience than the other, which is either something you've decided or something you find out later on in the journey through the data and the user base and how they interact. And this is really highly individual and specific to different apps. Sometimes it actually doesn't matter. With the algorithms kind of changing our world in the last few years and kind of pushing for more and more broadness in terms of campaign setup, where what is actually favored these days is don't do any segmentation and let the algorithm figure it out, which works sometimes, but other times it is actually beneficial to do localized targeting, and this is something that really needs to be tried. For example, in health and fitness, I've seen this work very nicely. It actually resonates much more if you show men on creatives to male audience, and women on videos or images to female audience. The conversion rates really see a huge impact there. Whilst, for example, with Lingo Kids, that hasn't really worked well for us. So there, the broader the better approach was really true for the app. And in terms of geographies, again, I've seen some different things, some very interesting things happening here, where one would think like, yes, let's localize, and yeah, let's use maybe Muslim models for Muslim countries, and blonde models for Nordics, so people can kind of maybe relate closer, or using also like a specific age model, like let's say 50 plus for 50 plus audience. This is not always true. Interestingly, oftentimes what people are looking for is more aspirational. So for example, even if you're targeting people in Africa or Brazil or wherever, it's like it would normally be the blonde cute kid that is the top performing, even though that's not really reflection of the user, let's say, or the young fit model would be resonating with the 50 plus potential customer, rather than somebody who was actually more closer to their own age. So there were some funny findings, and it's not always what you think it will be. And that's why it's important to really ABC, perhaps, test everything and find your own data, because also benchmarks, like I would never rely completely on anything provided on the internet. Every vertical, every app is different, and you might be surprised with what you find.
We have actually 3 minutes left, just to let you know. I didn't realize the time flew by so quickly. And we also have one question. We have one question, which is related to what you were just saying right now. So what tests do you perform to really understand the elements of creatives? A/B testing, or are you testing more than 2 versions at one time?
Right. So my preferred approach is to first, if we don't know what's working, right, then we look at creating different, like completely different concepts, like quite distinctly different. And this would be, let's say, ABCD test, right? So we create between 3 to 5 different concepts and we run them against each other. And in the case we find the winner, then it's important to pick one specific element that we will iterate on. So as you might know, it's crucial not to change more than one thing, because otherwise our test is invalid and we don't know what it is that really drives the desired behavior. And then basically you just got to drill down through A/B testing. Okay, is it what different backgrounds, maybe different models, kind of create different reactions. Perhaps messaging is really important and the model doesn't matter so much at all in terms of the creative. Perhaps it's the length of the video, if we are speaking of video, which is perhaps 90% of the advertising space nowadays. So yeah, I would say definitely start with big concepts, and then once you find something that works, drill further down and A/B test for specific iterations, one element iterations.
Great, thank you, Lucia. So that was Michaela Halasova, and she's also thanking us for all the tips. So hopefully Lucia has answered your question. I don't see any more questions here, but I also know I'm conscious of the time. We have 1 minute, and as Matej, the MC, has informed at the beginning, we will be literally kicked out at the end of this.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to stop it with a bang. So anything else that you'd like to share, Lucia, with the audience?
No. If there are no more questions, it's been a pleasure to be here.
There's one question.
Yeah. Okay.
Alessandro, how do you get user-generated content?
How do you get user-generated content? Well, that's a very good question. I've worked with user-generated content a lot, and this can really work well. You can turn it into creatives, and it can resonate very well with your audience. One way to do that is work closely with micro-influencers who are, small and cheap, and then basically you just buy or even get the content they generate for free from them. And of course, another way, really, really important, is to engage with your actual user base. So, create a database, email database, and email them. Perhaps do a contest, or just ask them, tell them like, hey, you seem to love our product and we really value that, and would you be able to and willing to share? And many people are.
Perfect. Thank you very much. This was great ending to the very, very good session. I really enjoyed it most. Thank you very much.
Thank you.